Hey everybody, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest with us today. You know her, you love her, Jill Stein. She's a physician activist, and she was the Green Party nominee for president in 2012 and 2016. And she remains committed to the environment, election reform, and many other progressive issues. Please welcome back to the show, Jill Stein. Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm great, Jimmy. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much, and thank you for refusing to give up the fight.
Well, you know, as my friend Steve-O says, every election since 1980, there's been no winner, and that winner has been Goldman Sachs. So I just want to say thanks for giving me an opportunity to vote against Goldman Sachs and vote against the war machine and vote against big oil and fossil fuel companies and fracking. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to vote against those things and vote for something that I really believed in, which was a Green New Deal. So I just want to say thanks.
Well, thank you. And I just want to add to that there's a lot of blaming and shaming going on in an effort to suppress political opposition. You know, this is this era of new McCarthyism, which brings together the lovely themes of warmongering, political repression, and censorship. And nothing could be more dangerous to our democracy. We are not the cause of Donald Trump. We are the antidote to Donald Trump. That is re-engaging our democracy. There were 100 million people who stayed home in the 2016 election. 100 million people who chose not to vote for either of the two candidates being shoved down our throat. That's a lot of people to be mobilized, you know, and that's millennials, people of color, and the poor. And this is why we need more choices, not less choices. There is no shame here. There's every reason to be proud and to hold the fort. And for those who are all bent out of shape, that there are voices beyond their control here in the political process, to them we say the answer here is not less democracy, it's more democracy. A democracy on life support does not need less of it. We need more of it, and the answer here is ranked choice voting. The answer is not suppressing political opposition. Without political opposition, there is no democracy.
Well, it is funny that we've gone from, it used to be the way electoral politics worked, Jill, was that as a candidate, you had ideas that excited people, and then they came out and voted for you. And that's not how it works anymore. How it works is you owe your vote to the Democratic Party, and if you don't vote for them, you're a bad person. And so not only do they not talk about the Electoral College reform, because they don't, apparently their donors don't want it, so they don't want it. And they don't talk about ranked choice voting. When I bring that up, people don't even know what it is. Mm-hmm. That's how little the Democrats talk about ranked choice voting, because they don't want that either, because that would increase participation in the electoral process, and that's not what they want. Their donors want the American elections are designed to suppress the vote, and then they run around voter policing, trying to make sure everybody votes. And I try to tell people that if the Democratic Party ran on a platform of ending the wars, a free college, a living wage, and Medicare for all, they would sweep back into power, yet they just won't do it.
Exactly.
And why do you think they won't do it?
Well, you know, they're all for it until they have the power to make it happen. You know, Obama had 2 houses of Congress and the White House. And what did he do? He bailed out the banks, and he bailed out the banks, and he bailed out the banks till he was punished in the midterms and he lost Congress. So he no longer had the power. So at that point, he could become quite the advocate, and this is what we see we've seen it in California, where single payer, right? Medicare for all could have been passed. And of course, they have to invent reasons not to do it. So it's like, this is not something new, folks. You can trace this all the way back to the Second World War, when the microphone was shut off on Henry Wallace, who was, the socialist of socialists, who made Bernie Sanders look like, some kind of a weak-kneed centrist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the microphone was shut off on him, basically denying him the presidency. And all the way forward, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, you name it. It's a game of fake left and move right. So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 1,000 times, really, really shame on me. And I have to say, I've been out there in the grassroots of late quite a bit. And when you get out there beyond sort of the reach of mainstream media, which is losing its grip as well, more and more people are just tuning out, as they
Correct.
should. You get beyond the reach, the brainwashing, the incessant, 1,000 times a day propaganda of the mainstream media, and people are not buying this one bit. I was in Coachella, California last night with the Chicano community, basically. And, Chicano is the new green, I have to say. We got really empowered, inspired Chicano candidates. I was out there last night supporting Victor Alcantara, who's running for city council, has a very good chance of getting in. And they really don't give the time of day to the Democrats because they know that Obama was the deporter in chief before you had Trump, just...
Right.
Out there with his incredible xenophobia and racism, which is just off the charts. He's more explicit, but Obama still holds the record. So people are not, I find, are less and less being fooled and more ready to stand up because we realize this is an existential moment. It's really now or never. We can only go so much further over the cliff towards fascism. And what laid the groundwork for Donald Trump? It was neoliberalism, which throws people under the bus, which makes them absolutely desperate and cling to demagogues and authoritarianism. It's not just Donald Trump. This is happening world over. We need democracy. We need social justice. We need peace. We need a solution to the environment. And we need a place to do it, and the Green Party and our candidates in this race offer that opportunity. We have 3 congressional candidates, you may know, who are in 2-way races.
So
there is no spoiler effect here.
right. So we're gonna get to that. In California, we have supermajority Democrats. Supermajority, meaning the Democrats can do whatever they want. Plus, we have Jerry Brown, who I was told my whole life is a far-out lefty hippie. As our governor, right? So we couldn't have, this is exactly what everybody thinks will bring utopia to the United States, is if we have a blue wave and we have blue. We have that in California, and guess what we don't have? We still don't have single-payer health care.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't have free college. We still don't have a ban on fracking.
That's right.
And that's Jerry Brown, right? Jerry Brown's in bed with the frackers. So my point is this we need leverage against the Democratic Party. And one of the big reasons I voted Green in the 2016 election was because the Greens don't need to get to a point where they can win a national election, even though that would be great. But what they need to be is in a position, or some third party needs to be in a position where the Democratic Party can no longer flip off the progressives in the country and the environmentalists in the country, which is exactly what happened. So in 2016, all the energy was with the progressive Bernie Sanders. And then as soon as he capitulated and endorsed Hillary Clinton, she then moved to the right. She didn't go and reach out to the left, to people like you and me, or people who supported Bernie Sanders. She went out and she went out after Republican votes. We know this, right? And that's why she chose Tim Kaine, who's to the right of her. Tim Kaine's anti-union. He's right to work. Mm-hmm. So my point is that if the Green Party was polling nationally 5-10%, the Democrats could no longer just ignore the progressives. They would have to then have like a coalition with the progressives. And, if Hillary Clinton would have put Bernie Sanders on as vice president, she would have won. She wouldn't do it. So that's why. So do you agree with that assessment of what I'm like? We're going to get into the down ballot races that is happening, but it's in the national level. Do you agree with my assessment that it doesn't matter if a third party, being the Greens in this case, actually can win the election? The point is to influence the election and pull the Democratic Party back to the left.
And let's just call it a win-win,
Right.
It's a win if we lose, and it's a win if we win, and we don't have to decide which one it's going to be because things change, and the Republican Party way back when was an anti-slavery party that was also called a spoiler,
Right.
And so things change, but absolutely we win simply by being heard. We win by standing up. And the whole concept that our votes the votes of progressives belong to Democrats, and we're taking them away from Hillary Clinton. Candidates don't own our votes. They have to earn our votes. And the very concept that they own them is extremely dangerous to democracy. And that's why you see the Democrats doing the outrageous things that they're doing that do not represent everyday people whatsoever. So this is not a cause for shame, and they keep trying to make us feel ashamed,
Yes.
And I just
Why
want to
don't they-
underscore this is a cause for celebration and for pride. Remember that green votes did not come from Hillary Clinton's camp. And
That's
this
right.
was demonstrated over and over by polls and surveys that people who voted green were largely, overwhelmingly taken from the non-voter bloc. There are 100 million people in that non-voter bloc who've basically said no to the corporate politics that's thrown them under the bus, that's absolutely ruined their future, thrown them into debt, etc. Hillary Clinton doesn't own those votes. The Democrats don't. So we can, we got to stand up and stand for what we're for, because the politics of fear has delivered everything that we're afraid of. It doesn't move us forward. When you go to the polls and you're only voting against what you hate, that doesn't give our political system direction. It needs direction. And remember, the answer to hypothetical splitting of the vote is ranked choice voting. The fact that Democrats won't support that tells, that's the giveaway right there, that their intention is not to preserve the integrity of the vote or the accuracy of the vote. It's to suppress political opposition. That's very dangerous. And this recent, pipe bomb threats that we've seen, needs to be connected to this milieu we're in right now of the new McCarthyism, which is about authoritarianism. It's about violence and militarism, as well as the suppression of political dissent. You just take one little baby step from there, and you're into an era of political violence. So this is very dangerous. It's not just Republicans who are committing it. This is happening. Just think back to Alexandria when you had a Democrat who was, taking target practice on Republican congressmen who were playing baseball. This is a bipartisan problem, and it is a problem that is imbued with militarism, the violence, and the authoritarianism that has become normalized and which is supported by both political parties.
Yeah. So, someone smarter than me said, and I can't remember who, but that whatever we do to the people overseas, we're going to do to ourselves, and we're exactly doing that. So we live in a militarized culture right now, right? So, and it's not only we're doing. It's so somehow it's okay to drop bombs on the poorest people in the world for 18 years straight, but and everyone's okay with it. And then pipe bombs, somehow that has crossed the line of decorum. Mm-hmm. So to me that's funny that there's decorum in killing. And B, the people who vote, they just voted for $700 billion to go to killing poor people in brown countries. And now they're surprised that some violence is visited on them, which we decry violence anywhere, right? And so it's about time well, if you're not going to be an anti-war party, maybe we need one, right? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. War is not incidental. When it's 57% of Congress's budget, mm-hmm. It's not incidental. When the major portion of your income taxes on last tax day, it's almost it was over $3,400 was the average contribution to the Pentagon. The average contribution for social programs was $80, and the average contribution for the EPA was $40. So this, there's no contest here. We are essentially a military budget with a few little, things going, there's just window dressing around the margins of that. So it's not separate from our struggle for healthcare, our struggle for free public higher education. We could pay for free public higher ed for everyone just in the increase in the military budget, which was larger than Russia's entire budget.
For military.
Yes.
So people who said that $60 billion a year for free college was a pony then went ahead without discussion, debate, or irony, or acknowledging the irony, they voted for $80 billion for a bloated war budget, and that's not a pony. They can just get that. There's no discussions, no town hall meetings, there's no op-eds written about it, no nothing. They just do it, and it's done, no conversation. But if you wanted to use that same money to give people free college, oh my God, the country would have to stop, and we'd all have to talk about this and who's going to pay for it, and we have to have it line by line how it's going to be paid for. But if you want to spend it on the military, no questions asked, it's all done. And that's why half the country doesn't vote. And that's why, and so people have to shame you and pretend that people who voted, because I wouldn't have voted in the presidential election if I couldn't have voted for you. So or somebody who represented my values. I'm done voting for corporatist warmongers because that makes you complicit.
It's worse than a wasted vote. It's using your vote as a weapon against yourself to vote for more of this corporate politics that's killing us.
So I just wanted to show you this, Jill. This was Bernie Sanders. This is what he said for the better part of his 35 years in politics.
But in the beginning, this is what would happen. You had the Democratic candidate running for something and the Republican candidate. Historically, Vermont had been a Republican state, moderate Republican, not right-wing, and then Democrats. And then we had a third party. And what would happen is debate after debate, television program after television program, the progressive third-party people would in fact get the best response from the audiences. And people would say, you know, you guys make a lot of sense. And then you go up to them and say, you're going to vote for us? And they say, oh, of course we're not going to vote for you. You can't win. You're going to vote for the Democrat. You're a much better candidate. Everything you're saying is true, but we can't waste our vote. Waste our vote was the expression. So if there's any term that drives me crazy, is this quote-unquote waste our vote.
So I still agree with Bernie Sanders that term drives me crazy. So what he said for all of his adult life, I agree with. Now, I don't know if he still says that, but I agree with that guy. And so here's what he has to say about moving forward.
Now, my own view, and it has been my view for many, many years, is that what we need in this country is what Jackson calls a rainbow coalition. But it has to be done outside of the Democratic Party.
So I just wanted to show that, and what people who want to shame you and shame Green voters, what they need to remember is that the Green Party is a totally different party. And as you said earlier, most of the people who vote Green would not vote otherwise. The biggest voting bloc in America is people who don't vote. So instead of wagging their finger over the marginal amount of people who come out to vote Green and vote their conscience, what people should be doing is wagging their finger at the Democratic Party for putting up such horrible candidates that it doesn't inspire people to come out to vote. People who voted for Barack Obama twice in Michigan and Wisconsin would not come out to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's on Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. That's not because of you or because of Russia or because of me or some guy jagoff comedian in his garage. That's because of the most powerful political machine in the world is no longer responsive to the people. And that's exactly what happened. It was exactly why half the country doesn't vote. And if they were responsible, they would have did an autopsy on the Democratic Party and why they lost to the most repulsive GOP candidate in the history of our country. They couldn't beat that guy. So instead of figuring that out, they wanted to distract and call you a Russian and call me Putin's buddy and call everybody I had something to do with Russia, even though now Mueller's investigation is winding down and it's going to be a big nothing burger. So I just wanted to show you that, and I wanted to just implore people to quit voter policing and voter shaming. What you need to do every time you want to yell at someone to make sure they vote, you should stuff that and then yell at a politician for not inspiring someone to vote. That's the real problem in our country, is that, there was a race in Kansas recently, and the people blamed the Green Party candidate for swinging that congressional, I think it was Ohio 12, I could be wrong, to swing that election to the Republican. And I'm like, did you see the Democrat who was running? He was literally saying he's just like John Kasich. That was his pitch. So his pitch wasn't I'm different. His pitch was I'm just like a Republican. So the Green Party decided to come out and vote for the Green Party. So I'm making this point over and over, but I just can't get over. I agree with this guy and the idea that Hillary Clinton, she was the first candidate in the history of politics who wasn't expected to garner votes by campaigning. You were just supposed to give her your vote. So I wanted to make all those points before we move on. Is there anything you want to add to what you saw Bernie say or what I just said?
Yeah, you're totally right on, Jimmy, and thank you for being a lifeline for so many people. And I just want to say that to this whole studio. You are a lifeline for so many people who are just hanging on to this little stream of truth that we still have access to, because even on social media and on the internet, that McCarthyism is alive and well and suppressing political opposition and exercising censorship and all that. So what this program is doing is so important, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I also want to just, I want to just underscore that this myth that we're all supposed to be good little boys and girls, and take our marching orders from either the Republican or the Democratic Party, and that's as far as you should ever go or you should ever think, and that's that, and everything is fine. That myth is just like outrageously ludicrous, and the grassroots is on fire right now. There really is an uprising that's in full swing, and this political repression, people are rightfully frightened of political violence and economic violence and racial violence and all that's just on the loose right now. But people are not caving into this system one bit, and people are. You don't hear it in the media. They're doing everything they can to suppress it because, as Bernie Sanders, the old Bernie Sanders, said way back then, this is common sense. This is common values. This is our basic humanity, and people are hungry for it. So the bottom line here is, don't get angry, get even. There are social movements that are alive and well, and there is political resistance. There is an uprising going on right now. My new home base is Green Uprising, which is just greenuprising.org, which is essentially a network for continuing the peaceful revolution and turning the resistance of 2016 into rebellion in elections to come.
So, what do you think? How I hate to be pessimistic, but I am now about just because of the latest IPCC report and what's going on. We can't even get. The Democrats still seem to be embracing an all of the above strategy.
They are.
As far as energy, which is a horrible strategy. Under Barack Obama, we opened the Arctic to drilling twice, and we had the highest amount of oil pumped out of the ground ever in the history of our country during Barack Obama's presidency. So this idea that the Democrats are going to save us from global warming, climate change, is not true. Correct?
Absolutely. And Nancy Pelosi, told Politico, I think it was, in a recent interview, that if the Democrats took the House back, that they would have a go slow policy on climate change. So, you're kidding yourself if you think that the Democrats are going to fix this, that suddenly they've seen the light and that their corporate donors and the frackers and the oil mongers that suddenly they don't care about them and their money anymore. No, they're still firmly in control. So don't be fooled, whether it's climate change, the Supreme Court, there you have, Chuck Schumer and the Judiciary Committee basically expediting Trump's appointments to the federal bench. So the Democrats are not going to save us from this extreme court either. And and they're criticizing Trump from the right. They're pushing him from the right. So when you see Trump now withdrawing from our nuclear weapons treaties, we have the Democrats to thank for this as well. And who was it that restarted the nuclear arms race? It was Barack Obama who initiated this $1.5 trillion being spent now on nuclear weapons. Instead of creating a new generation of nuclear weapons, we should be using that money to create a new generation of young Americans who are free from student debt. That money should be used for a bailout. So, on count after count, the Democrats are not going to save us. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yes, we are. And I just want to say, your idea to use quantitative easing for student debt, right? And it was, it was recklessly attacked with the most ridiculous species of reasons. John Oliver famously attacked you when he said, "You better know how quantitative easing works," meaning you personally, Jill. And I was like, really? So you would have said that to John F. Kennedy when he said we need to go to the moon by the end of the decade? Hey, you better know how to build a rocket. He doesn't have to know how to build a rocket. And the president doesn't have to know how to run the central bank. What the president needs to know how to do is have a vision. And we need someone to have a vision, and we need to end student debt, and we need to have a Green New Deal. We need to end the wars. We need to have free college. We need to end fracking, and that's called a vision. And then we have experts that fulfill that vision. And so that's, again, there was so many bogus attacks on you about that. Again, the thing that was called a pony, free college, again, they went ahead and just gave it to the military. Nobody cared where that money came from. Nobody cared how that was. Do you think Trump knows how that's being paid for? He doesn't know how that's being paid for. He doesn't know where that money comes from or where it goes or what the national debt means. Or he doesn't know any of that stuff, yet he's doing it. So apparently, John Oliver, wrong again.
On many counts, and several Democrats have now also taken up our call, not only for free public higher education, but also for bailing out students, for a student bailout. There are Democrats who are now, echoing that call as well. So double the shame on John Oliver.
Yes.
At least.
Talk about a guy who comes from a place with free health care. He's going to come here and tell me I'm crazy for voting for a progressive. Please make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are subscribed, there's a good chance you're not. So please check. It only takes a second. And then click that bell. And that's how you know you'll get a notice every time we drop a video. They still won't notify you every time we drop a video, but that's the best we can do. Plus, if you like the show, you want to support it, please become a patron. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And come see a live show. Go to jimmydorcomedy.com for our live schedule.